Carl Jung's most dangerous revelation wasn't about narcissism itself. It was about who the narcissist transforms into the moment the empath stops enabling them, and why this critical shift either triggers a complete psychological collapse or fully reveals the predatory core that was always there. In his foundational work on projection and the shadow, Jung identified what I call supply withdrawal syndrome, a chilling pattern where individuals with narcissistic tendencies, having built their entire grandiose persona on the endless validation of an empathic partner, undergo a shocking personality shift when that validation is abruptly cut off. Jung saw this discovery as dangerous because these individuals operate from what he termed false self-systems, elaborate facades that completely collapse without an external mirror to reflect them. When the empath reclaims their power, the narcissist doesn't just become sad or lonely. They devolve into what Jung called the unmasked shadow, revealing either a rare potential for genuine self-reflection or their true exploitative nature. What made this so disturbing to Jung was its sheer predictability. He could forecast exactly how different narcissistic types would react when their primary source of validation was withdrawn, and why most would dangerously escalate their manipulation tactics rather than dare to face their own authentic self. Today, I will reveal Jung's insights into the narcissist's true face when the empath stops playing along, and why he believed this pivotal crisis either forces a genuine confrontation with the self or unmasks the psychological predator that the empath's accommodation had been feeding all along. The patient who transformed overnight. Jung's breakthrough case involved a patient describing their partner's complete personality shift within days of establishing boundaries. The partner, charming and attentive for years, suddenly became what Jung documented as unrecognizably hostile. When accommodation ended, Jung observed something chilling. The partner began systematically using intimate knowledge against the patient, weaponizing shared vulnerabilities, private fears, and cherished memories as psychological attacks. This wasn't emotional distress, but calculated warfare. The individual revealed a predatory intelligence previously hidden beneath loving behavior. Jung wrote, "They demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation that could only have been developed through extended observation and practice." The patient described feeling like they'd been living with a stranger who had been studying them. The partner knew exactly which emotional buttons to press, which guilt tactics would be most effective, and which threats would cause maximum psychological damage. Jung realized this wasn't a person changing under stress. This was someone's true nature finally becoming visible. The loving behavior had been a performance designed to maintain access to validation, or supply. When that supply was threatened, the performance ended and the authentic self emerged. This case shattered Jung's assumptions about relationship dynamics and revealed what he called psychological parasitism, individuals who feed off others' emotional resources while providing only strategic affection in return. To learn how to build your own psychological armor against these exact tactics, I've just released a new ebook detailing Jung's protection protocols, the Shadow Work series. You can find the link in the description below. The false self-architecture. Jung discovered that narcissistic individuals construct what I call validation dependency systems, psychological structures that require constant external confirmation to maintain their self-image. Unlike healthy individuals who develop internal self-worth, these people create their identity through others' reactions. Jung identified three components of their false self-system. Mirror dependency. They construct their entire self-image from external reflection. Without constant validation, they experience what Jung called identity dissolution panic, a terror that they'll cease to exist without someone confirming their importance. Shadow evacuation. Jung observed they project all negative traits onto partners while keeping only positive qualities for themselves. The empathic partner becomes a psychological dumping ground for everything the narcissist cannot accept about their own nature. Control through confusion. They maintain dominance through what Jung called reality distortion tactics, gaslighting, emotional manipulation, and strategic affection that keeps partners uncertain about their own perceptions and dependent on the narcissist's version of reality. Jung realized this system creates psychological vampirism. The narcissist drains their partner's energy while contributing nothing authentic. The relationship becomes a one-way extraction operation disguised as love. When empaths withdraw validation, this entire system collapses. Jung observed the narcissist's response reveals their true psychological structure, and it's often far more predatory than anyone imagined. The escalation that exposes everything. Jung identified why narcissists become more dangerous when empaths establish boundaries. They enter what he called supply panic mode, where their psychological survival feels threatened. Jung documented a predictable escalation pattern. First comes the charm offensive resurrection, suddenly becoming the person the empath always hoped for. They may recreate early relationship magic, make promises of change, or demonstrate perfect understanding of previously ignored needs. When charm fails, Jung observed the shift to guilt siege warfare. They weaponize the empath's compassion through claims of devastation, threats of self-harm, or accusations of cruelty. Jung noted, they instinctively target the empath's inability to tolerate causing pain, exploiting this vulnerability with surgical precision. The final phase Jung called scorched earth psychology. When other tactics fail, some narcissists attempt to destroy what they cannot control, sabotaging relationships, spreading damaging information, or engaging in reputation assassination to isolate their former validation source. Jung realized this escalation reveals the narcissist's authentic nature. They were never loving partners but emotional predators who had learned to disguise exploitation as care. The empath's withdrawal doesn't create toxicity. It exposes the manipulation that was always present. Most disturbing to Jung was the strategic intelligence these individuals displayed. Their escalation wasn't emotional desperation, but calculated psychological warfare designed to break down boundaries and restore control. If you've experienced someone becoming more manipulative when you set boundaries, comment, "They showed me who they really were." The 4 faces of narcissistic unmasking. Jung identified 4 distinct patterns narcissists follow when their validation supply withdraws, each revealing different aspects of their true psychological structure. The desperate hunter. These narcissists cannot psychologically survive without external validation. Jung observed they become parasites seeking new hosts, cycling through love bombing, guilt trips, threats, and promises with increasing desperation. Jung documented they often develop abandonment psychosis, losing touch with appropriate boundaries in their pursuit of restored control. They may engage in stalking, public scenes, or harassment, revealing their belief that others exist primarily to serve their emotional needs. The rage demon. Jung identified narcissists whose false self dissolves into primitive fury when control is threatened. Their anger isn't about loss, but about property rebellion. They're furious, their psychological possession declared independence. These individuals often engage in punishment campaigns designed to make empaths regret their departure. Jung noted their rage typically intensifies over time because it's fueled by narcissistic injury rather than grief, revealing the shallow nature of their original attachment. The strategic replacer. Jung observed narcissists who immediately seek new validation sources rather than processing the relationship's end. They often maintain supply backup systems, multiple relationships specifically designed as validation alternatives. Jung noted strategic replacers frequently use new relationships as weapons, ensuring former partners know they've been replaced with someone better. This reveals their view of people as interchangeable validation providers rather than unique individuals worthy of authentic connection. The master manipulator. Jung's most concerning category represents narcissists who use the crisis as an opportunity to develop more sophisticated control tactics. They study what went wrong and adapt their approach for future relationships or reconciliation attempts. These individuals often adopt therapy language, spiritual concepts, or self-help terminology as manipulation tools. Jung observed they become empathy mimics, appearing to develop emotional intelligence while actually learning more effective exploitation techniques. The dangerous escalation psychology. Jung identified specific psychological mechanisms that explain why narcissists often become more harmful when empaths withdraw, making this period the most dangerous in toxic relationships. Identity collapse, terror. Jung observed that narcissists experience validation withdrawal as a literal survival threat because their identity depends entirely on external confirmation. Without their empathic mirror, they face what Jung called psychological annihilation anxiety. This terror drives increasingly desperate behavior as their false self begins crumbling. Jung noted they'll often escalate to extreme tactics rather than face the emptiness their grandiose persona was designed to hide. Control, restoration, compulsion. Jung documented that narcissists operate from what he called dominance dependency. Their psychological stability requires maintaining power over others. When control is threatened, they automatically activate escalating tactics to restore their position. Jung observed this compulsion operates below conscious awareness. They don't choose to become more manipulative. Their psychological system activates what Jung called predator protocols that feel like necessary self-defense. Reality distortion amplification. Jung identified that narcissists often respond to criticism or abandonment by creating what he called victim mythology, elaborate stories where they become the wronged party and their former partner becomes the abuser. This isn't conscious deception, but what Jung termed protective self-mythology. Their psyche cannot tolerate responsibility for the relationship's failure,